Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of The Fad Show. So on today's episode, I'm going to be installing these ASFIR skid plates for my 100 Series Land Cruiser. I just got these in. I'm actually pretty impressed with how quickly they came in. They actually get airshipped all the way from Israel, and I'm pretty sure they came in less than a week. So I'm going to install them and then give my initial impressions of them. I mean, they definitely feel pretty well built. As far as the kit goes, we'll see how it goes, putting it together, how easy it is. It doesn't look like there's really any instructions. It's kind of just figure it out. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll be able to figure out. It won't be too bad. I mean, obviously, it's pretty straightforward as far as how it goes together. I guess the part I'm kind of confused on is like which ones have to go on first, because it looks like they kind of overlap looking at pictures. But I guess my plan is just to put the cross brackets on first, and then obviously it'll be pretty easy to figure out where to mount up the skid plates to. Some preparatory work I did for this is about a year ago now, almost like 11 months ago when I first got my 100 series and I started doing all the maintenance on it. I took the OEM front skid plate off, and it's just been sitting on the side of my garage ever since, because I've been doing so much work on the truck constantly. I've just left it off. But when I pulled it off, I noticed that a lot of the threads were like really crusty and kind of falling apart. So the first thing I did, semi off camera, I did film like one of them. I went ahead and cleaned up all the threads for the OEM skid plate. The ones that were real bad, I used the tap and actually cut new threads. For the ones that could be saved, I just took a spare bolt I had and I just used some engine oil, and I would like turn it like one turn at a time, pull it out, clean off the rust, and then just do that over and over again, which takes forever until you clean the threads all the way through. Alternatively, if you had chaser taps, that would be the perfect tool for the job, but I don't have a set of those yet, so doing that worked. Obviously, if you use a real tap, then you risk kind of cutting new threads that if you thought original ones are still there and good, then I wouldn't do that. But anyways, with that, let's get to it. All right, so I did have to have help putting the cross member in for the transfer plate skid, but like I said, it just mounts to these whatever open holes in the torsion bar tensioner bracket. So I already found another problem is apparently the gearbox skid mounts to the OEM splash guards, which my truck doesn't have, and the bolts are missing. Luckily, they're M8 by 1.25, so I have some spare front skid plate bolts I should be able to use to go in here. Unfortunately, this one, it looks like the captive nut is gone. So I think I have a Rivnut that I can use here. This is probably thin enough that I can get a Rivnut in there and be able to support it there. If not, I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do. All right, so in order to install an M8 Rivnut, I would have had to drill the frame out, which I don't want to do because that's just going to promote rust. So this is a M6 by 1 Rivnut. So I guess it'll be a little bit less strong, but it's better than drilling into the frame. So this is only my second time ever using this tool. Sweet, so it looks like that's gonna work. Now I have a M6 by 1 hole here, so I'll just have to run out first trip to the store to get a M6 by 1 bolt that's gonna fit that. So before installing the gearbox skid bracket, I once again had to chase both of these threads because they were pretty nasty. And then also I realized I wasn't going to be able to install my new AC drain line that I got from Cruiser Garage. I've had it for a while. I can't remember how much I paid for it, but I think it was pretty cheap, and it is kind of cool because if you know, the factory AC will drain right here onto the sway bar bushing bracket. And if you live in kind of a climate that's less dry than I live in, then it will actually rust. Mine is just like ever so slightly starting to rust in the crack there. But you can get this extender that basically takes it from the firewall up there, and then it kind of runs it down over the top of the frame rail through the body bolt mount, and then it just drains out on the ground where it won't actually touch any part of the frame or bushing to rust it. So that's pretty cool. I wanted to get that in because obviously it was going to be more difficult once the bracket and skid plates are in. So here's the Gearbox skid bracket mounted. Here's that repair I made for the missing captive nut in the frame, which was the M6 Rivnut, and then I had to go get an M6 by 1.0 bolt. Obviously, this is not going to be as strong as the factory, the factory mounting point would have been, but I think this is better than drilling out the frame to put an M8 in, because then you're going to promote rust, because I'm not going to be able to coat it as good as the factory. And then I guess the only other option of like getting captive nut back in here would be to like cut a hole in the frame and weld in there. So I think it's going to be strong enough to do what it has to do. It has 3 other M8s in here. Really, it's just to keep it from bouncing off the bottom of the frame and making noise, which I think it will do. This bracket is kind of close to the torsion bars, but I guess they just turn. They don't actually move up and down. But anyways, I guess now I'll work on trying to figure out how to mount up the skid plates. All right, so I just had to make the second trip to the hardware store of the day. This kit for me has not been super bolt on, but I think the issue is the fact that I have the SLE diff drop kit, and obviously this is made for a stock 100 series. So I just had to go out and get a longer M8 by 1.25 bolt to go into the center mount, because I have to use the spacer. This is the ASFIR spacer. This is the sleeve spacer. So I just need a longer bolt, which I didn't have, in order to get that center position to bolt up. So kind of how I did this by myself is I just jacked it up using the jack, bolted in the front, and then I kind of let the back sit on the jack while I worked the center bolt in. I've already test fitted it, so it's possible to kind of reach in there and get everything lined up. So here's the center skid plate. I was able to kind of just balance its center of mass on the jack here. I'm going to attempt to slide it in the front, and then I can kind of move the jack back to support the rear end while I bolt in the front, or at least that's my idea. But on cardboard, it's difficult to move the jack around. So this one for the end of the gearbox skid or the rear end of the gearbox skid and front end of the transfer case skid has like a plate that you have to stick up kind of in this cross member behind, which actually is kind of nice because it self-centers itself. So it actually lines up the best out of all of these with my diff drop kit. So just slowly kind of figuring out the puzzle and working things together. They give you way more hardware than you need because every kit is kind of made where you could install it standalone. So a lot of the stuff overlaps. So it's just trying to figure out what you need and where it needs to go. All right, so here's how everything looks with it all installed. I'm definitely really happy with how it came out. It was not without its challenges. Like, first off, these trucks are 20 years old, so a lot of the threads are pretty nasty and need to be chased and cleaned up and corrected. So that made it a little bit more difficult. And then also, this kit from ASFIR is awesome. Like, you can definitely tell it's super high quality. I will say, though, if you have a diff drop kit, then maybe it would be better going with on into the other ones. Like, for me, I have a SLE diff drop kit, so maybe I should have gotten a SLE whatever skid plate kit, just because it definitely fitment was not 100% with that, because I had to use the spacers here in the front, like the little 20 millimeter pucks that go on top. Same thing with here. I had to use a 20 millimeter puck in here that comes with the sleeve dip drop kit, but it kind of just threw off the geometry as you moved back. Like, as you can see here, I have these are washers that I had in my garage. These are not part of the kit. They intend you to use all of these, which are kind of awesome, these like reset kind of centering washers. Unfortunately, just like with the way the geometry is just slightly off with the sleeve diff drop kit, I had to use these in a couple of locations. But overall, I mean, I think even despite those minor issues, it's definitely going to serve its purpose going forward. Everything fit up really well, I guess, once kind of those minor fitment issues were addressed, which again is not the fault of the kit. It's just the setup of my rig. So I'm not really sure how much the sleeve one costs. I think it was steel, if I remember, which is kind of one of the reasons I wanted to go with the ASFIR. I like the look of aluminum better, and then also I just wanted it to be lighter and more corrosion resistant. I'm not doing any tense off-roading. This is just kind of a whatever last resort protection. So yeah, this is how everything looks. Fit and finish on this is pretty awesome. I mean, there's like minor things as far as like you can see the oxidation from the plasma cutter or whatever, which I'm sure you could just polish that and take it off if you really cared. I don't really care. So yeah, here's how it looks going back. And it was pretty easy to install. I will say they give you the hardware. They give you enough hardware as if you were going to install every piece alone, and some of the stuff overlaps from plate to plate, so you'll end up with some extra. And then as far as the order of everything I did, I apologize I didn't do probably the best DIY because I was kind of improvising and figuring things out as I went. But I started by installing both of the cross members. I left them loose and then installed the first front skid plate first, and then worked my way back. I balanced the mid one on a jack while I slid it up under the front one, and then kind of worked on getting that in, and then kind of did the rear transfer case at the same time. But it's got definitely a good kit. Like, as you can see, it has cutouts for all your diff services. It has cutout for the transfer case service, the transmission drain, the oil drain has a cutout. The one thing I'm not sure how it's going to work as far as oil changes go. I mean, you can definitely get to the oil filter, but it's going to spill out onto the bottom of the plate. So I think I'm going to get like one of those flexible plastic funnels, like formable funnels that go in here. So you can kind of direct that out when you change the oil so you don't have to drop it. Because I guess it will be quite an endeavor every time you do have to drop these down. So yeah. So that's a wrap on this episode, guys. I apologize. I probably didn't do as thorough of a DIY filming as I should have. I definitely just kept running into snags along the way as far as not having the hardware I needed and trying to figure out my diff drop kit and how it was going to affect everything. But I got everything installed. Definitely, like I said before, I'm really impressed with the quality of the ASFIR kit. But if you have a diff drop kit and you want to fit perfect, then maybe probably just go with the skid plate kit that is from the same company as your diff drop, because definitely didn't fit as well as I would have hoped for. I had to improvise with a little bit of the hardware. Yeah, overall it's pretty easy. I guess these trucks are like 20 years old now, so the threads for the skid plates are pretty nasty and starting to fall apart, so you might end up having to fix a few of those. And then there was the one place where my captive nut was missing, so I used the Rivnut to fix that. So hopefully that will be strong enough. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. Definitely not as strong as stock, but I think it will do its job that it has to. So as always, guys, please like and subscribe if you like this video, and stay tuned for next time. Thank you. Bye.